What if I told you that the single most common piece of equipment in ice fishing, the one thing we all rely on for comfort, might be the number one reason you're not catching fish? It sounds crazy, I know, but today we're going to talk about a theory that might just change the way you see your cozy, heated shanty forever. We're asking the question, is your heater creating an invisible, high-pressure death zone that literally scares fish away? Stick with me, because what I'm about to reveal could be the answer to why that hot bite suddenly dies the second you get comfortable. Have you ever noticed fish on your sonar just vanish for no reason? Let me know in the comments, because you are not alone. For generations, the goal on the ice has been simple. Stay warm, stay longer, catch more. The portable heated shanty is the peak of that evolution. It allows us to fish in sub-zero temperatures, turning a brutal endurance test into a comfortable day out. We fire up that propane Mr. Heater without a second thought. It's just what you do. The belief is that what happens above the ice stays above the ice. Fish are down there, we're up here, and a little warmth makes no difference to them. We've been taught that fish care about bait presentation, lure color, and weather fronts, not about whether we're comfortable in our shelter. But this deeply ingrained habit, this universal ritual of ice anglers everywhere, might be built on a massive blind spot. Let's start by setting the scene. It's that perfect morning. The air is so cold it stings your lungs, and the snow under your boots makes that satisfying crunching sound. You've found your spot, the auger roars to life, and you punch your holes through 2 feet of solid ice. You get the shanty set up, blocking out the wind and the biting cold. It's your little sanctuary on a frozen world. You drop your transducer in the hole, and your flasher immediately lights up. You see those beautiful red and green lines suspended 10 feet off the bottom. It's going to be a good day. You can just feel it. The anticipation is palpable. This is the moment every ice fisherman lives for, the quiet potential before the first bite, when anything seems possible and the fish are right there, waiting. Everything is perfect, just as it should be, a textbook start to a day on the hard water. Now comes the ritual. Your fingers are starting to go numb, and you can see your breath hanging in the air inside the shanty. So you reach for the propane heater. You connect the little green bottle, turn the dial, and push the igniter. You hear that familiar whoosh as the ceramic plate begins to glow a soft, reassuring orange. A wave of warmth starts to push back the cold. You take your gloves off, you lean back in your chair, and you let out a sigh of relief. This is the game changer. This is what separates a short, miserable trip from a long, enjoyable day of fishing. The heater transforms your simple shelter from a windbreak into a comfortable room. It's not just a piece of gear, it's a critical part of the modern ice fishing experience, a symbol of comfort and endurance that we've all come to depend on without question. For most of us, this is the moment the fishing trip truly begins. You look back at your electronics, your eyes glued to the screen of the flasher or the graph. The fish are still there. You see a thick red line rise up off the bottom to investigate your jig. You lift, pause, and give it a little twitch. The line gets more aggressive, turning a bright yellow. Your heart starts to beat a little faster. This is it. You're in the zone, perfectly in sync with the fish below. You might even catch 1 or 2 right away, confirming your spot was a good choice. The screen is alive with activity, showing a healthy school of crappie or perch, maybe a cruising walleye. This is your baseline. This is the proof that fish are present, they are active, and they are catchable. You have everything you need, the right spot, the right bait, and a screen full of hungry fish. The conditions are perfect, and you're settled in for a fantastic day of catching. Then about 20 or 30 minutes after the heater has been running and the shanty is nice and toasty, you notice something odd. the marks on your flasher start to thin out. That big, confident school of fish that was right under you has started to break apart. A few minutes later, more are gone. Soon, you're staring at a completely blank screen. The fish have vanished, not just moved off a little, but completely disappeared from the cone of your transducer. It's like they were never there. You reel up, check your bait, it's fine. You switch lures, thinking maybe they got wise to your presentation. You try jigging more aggressively, then more subtly. Nothing. The screen remains empty. The life that was so vibrant just a short while ago is gone, and you're left in a state of confusion, wondering what on earth just happened. So what's the first thing we do in that situation? We start running through the typical fisherman's checklist of excuses. We tell ourselves a bigger predator fish must have spooked the school. Or maybe the bite just shut down, as it sometimes does. We might blame a subtle, unseen shift in the weather, even though the sky is clear. We might even convince ourselves that our electronics are acting up. The one thing almost none of us ever thinks to blame is the heater humming away quietly in the corner, the very thing that's making us feel so comfortable. We blame everything external to the Shanty, everything out of our control. The idea that we ourselves created the condition that drove the fish away feels completely counterintuitive. It's a massive blind spot in our process because we've been conditioned to see the heater as a helpful tool, not a potential problem. This is where we have to introduce the core of this whole discussion. It's a theory that feels like it comes from science fiction, but it's based on very real principles of physics. The theory is that your heater, by warming the air inside your sealed-up ice shanty, is creating a bubble of higher atmospheric pressure. This isn't a huge, dramatic change. It's a very slight, localized increase in pressure. But this bubble of air is pushing down on the surface of the ice directly beneath your shelter. It's a subtle but constant force that wasn't there before you fired up that heater. The question is, can this tiny change in pressure above the ice have a significant enough effect on the world below the ice to impact fish behavior? The answer, shockingly, might be yes. To understand why this matters, we have to talk for a second about barometric pressure. Every fisherman worth his salt knows that pressure changes affect fishing. We know that a falling barometer, often ahead of a storm, can trigger a feeding frenzy. A stable, high-pressure system, like on those cold bluebird sky days, can lead to a tough bite. Why? Because fish are incredibly sensitive to it. Air has weight, and that weight pushes down on the surface of the water. Fish have an internal organ called a swim bladder, which is essentially a gas-filled sac that helps them control buoyancy. Changes in external pressure affect this organ directly. A sudden change feels unnatural and can be uncomfortable for them, signaling a change in their environment they need to react to. They are basically living barometers. Okay, so how can a tiny propane heater possibly create a pressure change significant enough to matter? It comes down to a fundamental law of physics. When you heat a gas, it expands. Think about a hot air balloon. You heat the air inside, it becomes less dense and expands, and the balloon rises. Inside your ice shanty, you have a trapped volume of air. When you turn on your heater, you are rapidly warming that air. As it warms, it expands and the molecules move faster, creating more force. Since the shanty walls and roof are containing it, that expanding air has to exert its force somewhere. It pushes outward on the fabric, and, most importantly for our theory, it pushes downward onto the surface of the ice floor. You are effectively creating a small, artificial high-pressure system contained within the walls of your shanty. Now let's think about the ice itself. We see it as a solid, immovable barrier, but it's not perfectly rigid. Think of the ice under your shanty as something like the skin on a drum or the diaphragm of a speaker. When you apply pressure to the top of it, even a small, steady pressure from the expanding warm air, it has the ability to flex. We're not talking about a visible bend, of course. We're talking about a microscopic level of flexion, an invisible transfer of energy. That downward pressure from the air in your shanty is being transferred through the ice and into the water column directly below your hole. The ice is acting as a conductor, taking that change in atmospheric pressure from above and transmitting it directly into the aquatic environment below, like a piston pushing down on the water. So, the pressure is being transferred into the water. But how would a fish even notice such a small change? The answer lies in one of the most incredible sensory organs in the animal kingdom, the lateral line. The lateral line is a system of sense organs found in aquatic vertebrates, mainly fish, used to detect movement, vibration, and pressure gradients in the surrounding water. You can often see it as a faint line running down the side of a fish. It's like a highly advanced sonar system that gives them a detailed feel for their environment. It's how they sense predators, find prey, and navigate in murky water. This system is so exquisitely sensitive that it can detect the faintest of water displacements. A sudden, unnatural change in pressure, even a small one, wouldn't go unnoticed. It would light up their lateral line like a Christmas tree. Imagine you're a perch or a walleye just hanging out below the ice. Your entire world is relatively stable. The pressure is consistent. Then suddenly, from directly above you, there is a sharp increase in water pressure. It's not a natural change like a weather front that happens gradually over many hours. It's an immediate, localized spike. What does that signal to a creature that relies on instinct? In the natural world, a sudden downward pressure spike could mean only one thing: a large predator like a loon or an osprey diving into the water. It's a danger signal. It's an alarm bell that screams threat from above. The fish's ingrained evolutionary response to a signal like that isn't to stick around and see what's for dinner. It's to flee the area of perceived danger as quickly as possible. The instinct for survival will always trump the desire to feed. This is why we're calling it a death zone. It's obviously not a zone that literally kills fish. It's a zone where the bite dies. It's an area of perceived danger that their instincts tell them to avoid at all costs. From the fish's perspective, the water directly beneath your shanty has suddenly become a hostile environment. They don't know it's just a fisherman trying to stay warm. Their brain is hardwired to interpret that pressure spike as a direct threat to their life. So they do the only logical thing: they evacuate. They move out from under your shanty, outside the radius of that pressure dome, and relocate to a nearby area where the pressure feels normal and safe again. You're left sitting directly over a patch of water that the fish now consider a no-go zone. And the pressure change might not even be the only factor at play here. Let's consider a second, equally important sensory input: sound. Think about your propane heater, especially a popular model like a Mr. Heater Buddy. It doesn't operate in total silence. There is a constant, low-frequency hum and hiss that it produces. If you have a model with a built-in fan, that effect is magnified even more. We barely notice it because we're surrounded by air, but that heater is sitting directly on the ice. The vibrations from its operation are being transferred from the body of the heater through its base and directly into the sheet of ice you're sitting on. It's a subtle but constant source of unnatural vibration that is being pumped into the fish's environment. Now we have to remember that sound and vibration travel incredibly efficiently through solid objects and water. In fact, sound travels about 4 times faster in water than it does in air. The massive sheet of ice you're on acts like a giant amplifier. It takes that low-level hum from your heater and transmits it perfectly down into the water column. To the fish below, this isn't just a faint background noise. It's a constant, unnatural drone that's unlike anything they would typically encounter in their environment. Their super-sensitive lateral line picks up these vibrations with extreme clarity. It's another layer of sensory information that tells them something strange and potentially dangerous is happening directly above them. It's one more reason for them to be on high alert. So now let's put the two pieces of this puzzle together. You fire up your heater. You start creating a dome of higher pressure that pushes down on the ice, which in turn creates an unnatural pressure spike in the water, a primary danger signal for fish. At the exact same time, the heater is creating a constant, low-frequency hum that vibrates through the ice and into the water, creating a persistent, unnatural sound. You have now created a double whammy of negative sensory input. You are simultaneously scaring the fish with a perceived physical threat from above and annoying them with a constant, irritating noise. This isn't just a minor disturbance anymore. This is a full-on sensory assault on the world of the fish. It's the perfect recipe for clearing out a spot. Now, it's important to be realistic here. Is this going to happen every single time, in every single situation? Probably not. The magnitude of this effect is likely dependent on a number of variables. The most important one is probably depth. If you are fishing for lake trout in 100 feet of water, a tiny pressure change at the surface is going to be so dissipated by the time it reaches the bottom that it's likely completely unnoticeable. The sound will also be much less intense at that distance. The fish's world is simply too far removed from the source of the disturbance for it to matter. So for deep water applications, you can probably crank your heater with confidence and not worry about creating a so-called death zone. However, let's think about where most of us spend our time ice fishing. We're often in much shallower water. We target panfish like crappie and bluegill in weed beds that are in 6 to 12 feet of water. We chase walleyes along shallow reefs and points that top out at 15 or 20 feet. In these shallower environments, the fish are much closer to the source of the disturbance. The pressure change from your shanty doesn't have far to travel and will be felt much more acutely. The vibrations from the heater will be louder and clearer. In shallow water, you are essentially sitting right on top of the fish's head. It's in these common everyday fishing scenarios where this theory goes from being a curious idea to a potentially critical, game-changing factor that could be the difference between a full bucket and going home empty-handed. At this point, I know what many of you are thinking. It's the big counter-argument. I've caught thousands of fish in my heated shanty over the years. This theory is nonsense. And that's a fair point. Of course, fish are still caught from heated shanties all the time. No one is saying it makes catching fish impossible. Some fish might be more aggressive and less sensitive than others. Sometimes a fish might be moving through the area quickly and grab your lure before it even registers the disturbance. But we aren't talking about the 1 or 2 aggressive fish you managed to catch. We are talking about the school of 50 fish that was sitting under you and why 48 of them decided to leave. We're trying to explain why a hot bite suddenly dies for no apparent reason, and this theory provides a very plausible explanation. You don't have to take my word for it. This is something you can easily test for yourself. It's a simple experiment. The next time you get on the ice and you're marking a good number of fish, resist the urge to turn on the heater right away. Fish for a while in the cold, watch your electronics, see how the fish are behaving. Then, after you have a good baseline, turn your heater on. Keep your eyes glued to that screen. Don't change your lure, don't change your jigging cadence. The only variable you are changing is the heater. Watch what happens over the next 15 to 30 minutes. Do the fish start to drop to the bottom? Do they slowly move out of the cone? Do they vanish all at once? Observe and see if you can detect a pattern. The results might just surprise you. So, if this theory holds water, what is the solution? Are we supposed to just give up on comfort and go back to freezing on an open bucket? Absolutely not. The solution might be surprisingly simple: ventilation. Most of us already know we need to keep a vent or a window cracked in our shanty to prevent dangerous carbon monoxide buildup. But that ventilation might be serving a dual purpose. By allowing some of that expanding warm air to escape, you may prevent that high-pressure dome from ever forming in the first place. You are giving the pressure a place to go other than down. This equalizes the pressure inside your shanty with the pressure outside. It's a simple adjustment that could potentially solve the pressure problem, allowing you to stay warm without creating an environment that repels the very fish you came to catch. So, let's bring this all together. The comfort we take for granted from our heated shanty might come at a cost we never considered. We've explored how simple physics, heating and expanding air, could create a dome of high pressure. We've talked about how that pressure, combined with the heater's vibrations, could be transmitted through the ice, creating a death zone of perceived danger that drives fish away. The biggest wow moment here is realizing that the most overlooked variable in our fishing success might be the immediate environment we create for ourselves inside the shelter. It's not about the lure, the rod, or the line. It's about how our presence and our comfort might be poisoning the very spot we chose. This idea could fundamentally change your approach, especially in shallow water. It means thinking about ventilation not just for safety, but as a fishing strategy. Thank you so much for watching and going down this rabbit hole with me. If this gave you something to think about, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that challenges traditional fishing wisdom. Now, for the big question, what's the strangest thing you've seen on your flasher that you just couldn't explain? Let's discuss it in the comments below. I want to hear your stories.